The distress beacon screamed through the void like a dying star. Commander Lisa Grant stared at the signal on her console, her fingers hovering over the controls of the patrol vessel Valiant. 3 years of deep space reconnaissance, and she'd never seen a signature like this. Irregular, desperate, wrong. Course plotted to beacon source, her AI companion announced. Estimated arrival, 14 minutes. Warning, sector is uncharted. No registered vessels in database. Lisa's jaw tightened. Uncharted meant dangerous. It meant questions without answers. But it also meant someone needed help, and she hadn't joined the Earth-Space Coalition to ignore cries for aid. "Take us in," she ordered. The asteroid came into view like a broken tooth against the stars. Twisted metal jutted from its surface, the remnants of a ship that had died violently. Scorch marks painted the rock in patterns Lisa recognized too well. Plasma fire. Recent. She suited up and crossed the void on her jetpack, mag boots clanging against the wreckage. The ship's hull bore symbols she'd never seen before, angular and sharp like claw marks carved into steel. Inside, emergency lights flickered red across corridors built for something much larger than humans. Then she heard it. A sound that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of space, transmitted through the metal itself. Crying. High-pitched and broken, like a child in pain. Lisa moved faster, pulling herself through collapsed passages until she reached what looked like a cargo hold. And there, huddled in the corner beneath a makeshift containment field that was failing by the second, was a creature that stopped her heart. It was the size of a large dog, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to midnight blue. Wings, small and crumpled, pressed against its sides, a long tail wrapped around its body protectively. But it was the eyes that held her frozen, huge, golden, and filled with a terror so pure it transcended species. A baby. This was a baby. Lisa, her AI warned through her helmet comm. That's a Drakari hatchling. Initial scans confirm. The Drakari are an uncontacted species. Protocol requires... "I know what protocol requires," Lisa interrupted, moving slowly toward the creature. It whimpered, pressing itself harder against the wall. Blood, dark and thick, oozed from wounds across its body. Someone had hurt this child. Badly. The containment field flickered again, and Lisa made her choice. She deactivated her helmet seal and let her faceplate retract. The air was thin but breathable. She needed the creature to see her face, to know she meant no harm. "Hey there," she whispered, kneeling down slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." The hatchling's nostrils flared, tasting her scent. Its crying quieted to small, hitching sounds that broke something inside Lisa's chest. She'd lost her own daughter 5 years ago to a transport accident. The sound of a child in pain was a knife she'd never stopped feeling. She extended her hand, palm up, and waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, slowly, the creature extended its head and pressed its snout against her palm. It was warm, alive, trusting her with everything it had left. "I've got you," Lisa said, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. "You're safe now." Getting the hatchling back to the Valiant took careful work. It was weak, barely able to move, and Lisa had to carry it in her arms like a child. It weighed more than she expected, but she didn't care. Once aboard, she set up a medical bay and worked through the night, using her ship's limited xenobiology database to treat the wounds. The AI was not pleased. "Commander, you're violating first contact protocols. The Drakari are a complete unknown. This could be considered an act of aggression or kidnapping by their government. This is a wounded child abandoned in a destroyed ship," Lisa shot back, applying synthetic tissue sealant to a deep gash. "If their government did this, then their government can come explain it to me." She didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, the sensors screamed. 3 massive vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Each one was twice the size of Earth's largest battlecruiser, built like predators designed to hunt among the stars. Their hulls gleamed with the same angular symbols Lisa had seen on the wreckage. The hatchling, whom Lisa had started calling Ember for the way its scales glowed when it felt safe, whimpered and pressed against her leg. It knew those ships. It feared them. Incoming transmission, the AI announced. The face that appeared on Lisa's screen was nightmare and majesty combined. Reptilian, yes, but with an intelligence that burned like cold fire. Scales of deep crimson, eyes like molten gold, and teeth that could rip through steel. This was a Drakari adult, and it radiated power. Human vessel. The voice rumbled, each word carefully pronounced in perfect English. You possess property of the Drakari Empire. A defective hatchling marked for disposal. Return it immediately. Lisa felt ice flood her veins. Disposal. They were talking about Ember like broken equipment. This isn't property, she said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. This is a living being, and it was wounded and abandoned. The Drakari's expression didn't change. The weak are cold. This is our way. The hatchling failed genetic standards. It is too small, too frail. It would shame any bloodline. Your interference is noted and will be forgiven if you comply within the hour. Ember made a small, terrified sound. Lisa looked down at the creature pressed against her, trembling. She thought of her daughter. She thought of every child who'd ever been told they weren't good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. No, Lisa said. The Drakari commander's eyes narrowed. You refuse the Drakari Empire? I refuse to hand over a child to be killed for being small, Lisa said, anger flooding through her fear. On Earth we have laws. We protect those who can't protect themselves. I'm claiming this hatchling under humanitarian rescue protocols. The commander's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Humanitarian. How amusing. You soft-scaled primitives and your sentiment. Very well. You have 1 hour to reconsider. After that, we will take what is ours by force. Your vessel will be destroyed. You will die for your foolish compassion. The transmission cut. Lisa stood in the sudden silence, her hand resting on Ember's head. The hatchling looked up at her with those huge golden eyes, and she saw the question there. Would she abandon it too? Would she choose her own life over a creature she'd known for only 3 days? AI, Lisa said quietly. Can we outrun them? Negative. Their vessels are faster and more heavily armed. Probability of escape, 0.3%. Can we fight? Negative. We would be destroyed in approximately 47 seconds. Lisa closed her eyes. Then she opened them and smiled down at Ember. Then we use the one weapon they don't have. She spent the next hour working frantically. She set up every camera on her ship, every recording device. She positioned them to capture her and Ember in the medical bay. And then she did something that would change the galaxy forever. She sat on the floor and pulled Ember into her lap. The hatchling curled against her, still weak, still hurting, and Lisa held it the way she'd once held her daughter. She stroked its scales gently. She hummed a lullaby her mother had taught her. She let her tears fall freely onto Ember's head as she whispered promises of safety and love. And she recorded everything. Then she began to speak, looking directly into the camera. My name is Commander Lisa Grant of Earth. I'm broadcasting this on all frequencies, to anyone who can hear. 3 days ago I found this child abandoned and wounded in a destroyed ship. The Drakari Empire has demanded I return it so they can kill it for being too small and weak. They've given me 1 hour to comply or be destroyed. She paused, feeling Ember's heartbeat against her chest. I want every species that receives this to see what the Drakari call weakness. This is a living being. It feels pain. It feels fear. It cries when it hurts and calms when it's held. And the Drakari want it dead because it doesn't meet their genetic standards. Lisa's voice grew stronger. On Earth we have a saying. We judge a society not by how it treats its strongest members, but by how it protects its most vulnerable. The Drakari Empire has revealed what it truly is. An empire built on cruelty. An empire that murders children. She looked down at Ember, who was watching her with complete trust. I'm a human. We're called soft and primitive, but we understand something the Drakari don't. Compassion isn't weakness. Love isn't foolishness. And protecting those who can't protect themselves isn't a flaw. It's what separates civilization from barbarism. Lisa's tears fell faster now. In 50 minutes, the Drakari will probably kill me, but I won't abandon this child. I won't betray its trust, because that's not who humans are. We don't measure worth by strength. We measure it by the courage to care when caring is hardest. She kissed the top of Ember's head. If I die today, let this message stand as proof. Humanity will not bow to empires built on the corpses of children. And one day, maybe, the Drakari will learn that the strongest weapon in the universe isn't plasma fire or warships. It's the willingness to say no when you're told to do evil. Lisa ended the recording and broadcast it. Every frequency, every channel, emergency bands, commercial networks, military channels. She sent it everywhere, including directly to the Drakari homeworld. Then she held Ember close and waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, her console lit up with incoming messages. Human colonies, alien species she'd never heard of, news networks across a dozen civilizations. Her broadcast was spreading like wildfire, translated and retransmitted across the galaxy. And on the Drakari warships, something unprecedented happened. Commander Vorath stood on his bridge, watching the human's message play on every screen. His crew watched too, unable to look away. They saw the human female's tears. They saw how gently she held the hatchling. They saw something their empire had taught them to despise as weakness. And for the first time in Vorath's 300 years of service, he felt doubt. "Commander," his weapons officer said quietly, "the human's message has reached our homeworld. It's being broadcast on civilian networks. There are protests forming." Vorath's claws tightened on his command throne. Impossible. The Drakari did not protest. The Drakari did not question. They obeyed the strength of their leaders. But his communications officer spoke again, voice trembling. "Sir, we're receiving messages from other ships in the fleet. Some crews are requesting clarification on the mission parameters. They're asking if we're really going to kill a hatchling and the being protecting it." Vorath felt something crack inside his carefully constructed worldview. He looked at the screen, at the human holding a creature his empire had deemed worthless, and he saw something he'd never seen before. He saw a mother willing to die for a child that wasn't even her species. "Weapons," he ordered, his voice rough. "Target the human vessel. Prepare to fire." But his weapons officer didn't move. "Sir, I can't." Silence flooded the bridge. Vorath turned slowly. "You refuse an order?" The younger Drakari met his eyes, and Vorath saw something that terrified him more than any enemy weapon. He saw conscience awakening. That hatchling did nothing wrong except be small, the weapons officer said. "And that human is showing more honor than our entire empire. I won't kill them. Court-martial me if you must." "I stand with him," the communications officer said. "And I," added the navigator. One by one, Vorath's crew refused the order. And on the other two warships, the same rebellion was spreading. Crew members who had served without question for decades were suddenly questioning everything. Vorath looked at the human's face on the screen, at her tears, at her defiance. And he understood, with a clarity that shook him to his core, that she had done something no warrior had ever accomplished. She had weaponized compassion itself. "Stand down," Vorath ordered quietly. Then, louder, "All ships, stand down." His second-in-command stared at him. "Commander?" "Send a message to the human vessel," Vorath said. Tell her she has won." But it was already too late for simple surrender. The Drakari homeworld was erupting. Lisa's broadcast had reached millions of Drakari civilians who had never questioned their empire's brutal philosophy. They saw the humans' tears and the hatchlings' trust, and something long buried began to wake. Parents who had lost children to genetic screening, warriors who had secretly doubted the cruelty of their culture, scientists who had wanted to study compassion but feared execution. They all saw Lisa's message and realized they weren't alone in their doubts. Protests became riots, riots became revolution, and aboard the Valiant, Lisa held Ember close as the Drakari warships powered down their weapons and retreated. She didn't know she'd just sparked the first civil uprising in Drakari history. She didn't know that her name would become legend across the galaxy. She only knew that the child in her arms was safe. Ember looked up at her and made a soft, chirping sound. Then it did something that would be documented and studied for generations. It pressed its head against Lisa's chest, directly over her heart, and began to glow with a soft golden light. "AI," Lisa whispered. "What's happening?" The AI's voice was filled with wonder. "Accessing xenobiology databases. Commander, according to fragmentary Drakari data we've just received from sympathetic sources, that's a bonding ritual. Ember is claiming you as its mother, permanently. In Drakari culture, this bond is sacred and unbreakable." Lisa felt fresh tears stream down her face as she held her new daughter closer. "I accept," she whispered to Ember. "I'm your mom now. I promise I'll always protect you." The glow intensified, then faded, leaving Ember purring contentedly in her arms. Over the following weeks, the galaxy changed. The Drakari Empire fractured as reform movements gained power. Vorath himself defected, leading a faction that called themselves the New Drakari, dedicated to building a culture that valued all life. Lisa's broadcast became the most watched message in galactic history, and Lisa Grant, former patrol commander, became something else entirely. The Drakari reformists called her the Queen of Compassion. Other species called her the mother who defied an empire. But to Ember, now growing stronger and healthier every day, she was simply Mom. Earth welcomed them both as heroes. Lisa gave speeches about compassion and courage. Ember became the first Drakari to attend human schools, to play with human children, to show the galaxy that different species could build families based on love rather than blood. But Lisa's favorite moments were the quiet ones. How it could have slipped outside of our perimeters. The evenings when Ember would curl up next to her, scales glowing softly in contentment, and Lisa would stroke her daughter's head while reading stories about brave humans and the power of kindness. "Mom," Ember asked one night, her English now fluent despite her young age, "you could have died." Lisa smiled and pulled her daughter close. "Because some things are worth dying for. Love, compassion, the belief that every life has value. Those aren't weaknesses, Ember. They're what make us strong." Ember's golden eyes gleamed with understanding beyond her years. "The Drakari are changing because of you. Because you showed them tears could be more powerful than weapons." "No," Lisa corrected gently. "They're changing because they were ready to change. I just gave them permission to feel what they'd always felt but were afraid to show. Compassion was always there, buried deep. It just needed someone to prove it was strength, not weakness." Ember pressed closer, purring. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart." Outside their window, stars blazed across the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Drakari Empire was transforming itself, writing new laws, building new traditions based on protecting the vulnerable instead of culling them. Somewhere out there, other species were watching and learning that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their technology. It had always been their refusal to abandon those in need, their tears for the suffering, their willingness to stand against empires and say, with absolute conviction, that compassion was not a weakness but the highest form of courage. Lisa Grant had proven that a single human with a breaking heart could shatter an empire built on cruelty. She'd shown the galaxy that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was cry for someone else's pain and refuse to look away. And in her arms, Ember slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where no child would ever be called defective, where strength was measured in kindness, and where a human mother's tears had rewritten the destiny of an entire species. The Queen of Compassion smiled and held her daughter close, knowing that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was changing, one heart at a time, and it had all started with a simple choice: to protect a child, no matter the cost, because that's what humans did. They cared when caring was hardest. They loved when love was dangerous, and they never ever abandoned those who needed them most. That was humanity's true strength, and the entire galaxy was finally beginning to understand.